Hello, this is John Pinto. I'm a mathematician and amateur astronomer, and I'm going to be presenting Dominique Prinet's course on celestial navigation. This is episode number 13, where we're going to cover the sun coordinates in the almanac, and we're going to keep it simple for this episode and just look at the sun coordinates for examples of whole number hours. We're not going to deal with minutes and seconds in this episode. We're going to do that in the next one. So this course is based on Dominique's book, Celestial Navigation, and the exercises and answers to the exercises can be found in his accompanying exercise manual. You can find out more about these books and Dominique's courses at marinenavigationbooks.com, where you can get some free resources, including this slide deck that we're going to be using for the course. And also there's a free PDF of the exercise book. But I recommend getting the full physical book if at all possible. So in the almanac, there's two things we're going to be pulling out of there. We're going to be looking for the declination of the sun, and we're going to be looking at the GHA of the sun. So let's start with declination. So the declination, if you recall, is the height of the sun above the equator. So this is equivalent to latitude when you're talking about locations on the Earth. So obviously a latitude can be north of the equator or south of the equator. And then similarly, the declination can also be north of the equator or south of the equator. So let's take a look at some examples. Before we get to that, let's just go over what we mean by declination. Why does the declination of the sun change? Well, as the sun goes around, as the Earth goes around the sun, from the Earth's point of view, it looks like the sun is going up and down on the Earth. But what's really happening is because of the tilt of the poles of the Earth, they're not exactly straight up and down, they're tilted. As it goes around the sun, different parts of the Earth will be above the sun at different times of the year. So, for example, in June, the sun is north of the equator, about 23 degrees north, and overhead. And then on December 22nd, when the Earth gets to the other side of its orbit, the sun will be overhead at 23 degrees south. But in reality, it's just the fact that the Earth is turning around the sun, orbiting around the sun, and its overhead location, because of that tilt, is going to change. Those extreme northern and southern locations of where the sun is overhead have names. So 23 degree north is called Tropic of Cancer, and 23 degrees south is called Tropic of Capricorn. And the reason they're called that is because when the sun is at that location, it's actually in the constellation of Cancer. And when it's south in December, the sun will be in the constellation of Capricorn. And of course, when it's over the equator is when we have our equinoxes, March 22nd and September 22nd. This is how the declination changes. Basically, if you ever, lost your almanac and you just want to have some idea, or even if you do have your almanac, just to double check yourself, you could draw a quick little graph here with these dates of the equinox, solstice, equinox, solstice, equinox. Draw this line, and you'll have some, basic idea of where you will be on this graph. And so you can make sure, you're pulling out the right information from the almanac. It's always good to have some way of double checking yourself. Now we'll get into some examples. So here we are, June 30th. It's a little bit past the solstice on June 22nd. And we want to know where is the sun's declination at 0500 UTC. So we open our almanac to the June 30th page. We go down to the day of the 30th. We go down for the 5th hour, and we look across into the declination column. And whether it's north or south, and the number of degrees will be here. Now, it doesn't always repeat it, so you have to be a little careful. But you want to find your row and then the record of its north or south declination above it, or right at it. So in this case, it's going to be north 23 degrees, 11.8 minutes. Now let's go for a south declination. Here it's November 18th at 0900 hours. We find the page that has November 18th. We go to the day of the 18th. We go down to our hour, 0900, and we look across here, and we find the declination degrees that are either at our row or just above it. And we see it's south 19 degrees, 09.6 minutes. Now, November 18th is a little bit before the winter solstice, so it's not going to be all the way at south 23 degrees. It's going to be a little bit before that. So south 19 degrees, that sounds pretty reasonable. Okay, so that's declination. Greenwich hour angle. Greenwich hour angle is, again, sort of the equivalent of longitude on the Earth. The only real difference is Greenwich hour angle always goes west of Greenwich and goes all the way around. So it goes from 0 degrees to 90 degrees to 180 degrees, 270 degrees, back to 360, and then starting back at 0. The longitude, however, is counted both west and east. So longitude goes 0 to 180 west and goes 0 to 180 east. So you just have to be a little bit careful if you're trying to convert Greenwich hour angle to longitudes. You need to take that into account. So here's an example of a longitude where the sun is over Vancouver, and the GHA would be about 123 degrees. So let's take a look at that in the almanac. So here we are, February 1st, 2100 hours. Where is the sun? We look up February 1st. We go down to 2100 hours. And in the GHA column, we see it's at 131 degrees, 36.0 minutes. Let's look at a GHA east, where the longitude happens to be east. So let's take an example of Cairo, Egypt. If the sun was over Cairo, its GHA would be about 328 degrees, but its longitude would be 360 minus 328. So that's about 32 degrees east. Yep, 32 degrees east, that would be longitude. But GHA is what we use for celestial navigation for our sun and stars and the moon, planets. So GHA, 328 degrees. Let's pull one out of the almanac on February 2nd at 0800. Here we go down. 2nd of February, 0800 hours. Sun is at 296 degrees, 35.1 minutes. Now you could tell that's east because it's greater than 180 degrees. And here's some exercises for you to do to pulling out GHA and declination from the tables in the exercise book, which you definitely want to either download or purchase. And work these out and check that you get the right answers. Or if you get the wrong answers, you can figure out where you went wrong. Sometimes making mistakes is the best way to actually learn and not make those mistakes in the future. Next episode, we'll be covering how to account for minutes and seconds of time when pulling the sun coordinates out of the almanac. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.